I'd like to put this to Dr. Swasti Abhishek, because I don't think it's that simple. The fact that the meeting happened in the White House at a time like this, and they've also summoned our NSA. And look at the statements they have made in the last few months, Dr. Swasti Rao. I mean, when Arvind Kejriwal was arrested, right? America had no business to give a statement out. They did, right? There have been several statements. In March, April, they spoke about minorities in India, right? We don't talk about what happens in America, the riots there or the killings there or the shootings there. But out of turn statements, and the meeting, the symbolism of it is not lost on any Indian who reads this news, Dr. Swasti Rao.
Well, I mean, there are a couple of things here, and I think they're pretty entwined. So we need to sort of, lay them more threadbare in order to understand them better. One is that, of course, India has one of the reasons why India has this mistrust of the West, the larger West, and also the US, is also coming from the fact that it has, especially the Democrats, have an interfering kind of attitude, which is condescending about all these things that you mentioned. That's one thing. The other thing is, especially about the Pannun case, I think right now, if you look carefully, I would not really take seriously, I was just listening to one of these discussions by Ambassador Meera Shankar, who was actually India's ambassador to the US. And, she mentioned that for Pannu, it's something which is very common. I mean, he would just keep doing these things, and he's kind of an irritant. But what really should matter to us is the fact that if this is being done by an official agency in the US, I think if you look carefully, I think since this is the US legal system, I guess if you look at the official statements made by the Indians, I guess they very much realize is that the ball is right now in their court, and they have to take it forward in a more legal, technical manner. I think the Indian side has also set up a high-level committee, so you would expect those kind of things to be handled there. That's one part. The other part is that I was speaking about, these statements and all this tone and tenor that obviously gets India pretty cheesed off with the US. And I think there's something important needs to be mentioned, which is that, it is quite understandable in one way that when you are trying to build a strategic relationship with a country which is very young, you also have to understand that they also function in a particular way, as long as those kind of things do not reflect in policy statements. And if you carefully see how the India-US relationship has been developing right from the time when we signed the 2005 nuclear deal, and then the rest is history, especially the last 10 years, you also get a maturity that, you have to find perhaps a different kind of a strategic communication to understand what is to be given importance and what is not. Because let's not forget, because for Democrats, you are dealing with a democracy, and which is a different democracy from yours. It may not be a perfect democracy, but it is different. And somewhere, us being a democracy, we also perhaps need to sort of understand that on the one hand, we need to expand our convergences, but then there is no way under the sun that all divergences will disappear. And lastly, I think you need to somewhere sort of acknowledge the fact that the Democrats also have lobbies that they have to please, because they, at the end of the day, are also into this electoral circus. And just this is with respect to, all the statements and this and that. And I do agree that if the US wants to really take it to the next level with India, I mean, ideally, we would obviously want a more stable, a more, healthy communication instead of these kind of things, which really get us cheesed off. But just one thing that nobody is discussing here, which is very important, is that there seems to be a kind of a broad assumption that the minute Donald Trump is going to become a president, in case he becomes the US president, the Ukraine war will end. I think nobody is really reading into the details of how this communication between the Europeans, the Ukrainians, and the Donald Trump, people, MAGA especially, has been evolving, which is that please pay attention to the fact that, the Biden administration signed a document called the Lend-Lease Agreement, but never really activated it. And all the aid that was going to Ukraine was actually coming from the presidential drawdown, at least the majority of it. The Ukrainians are of the view, the Europeans are of the view, though there is uncertainty, which will always be there in the case of somebody like Donald Trump, but at the same time, keeping in mind how transactional he is, he might actually double down on the aid to Ukraine by activating the Lend-Lease Agreement, because of this case of most of that aid coming back to the American military industrial complex. So what I'm trying to say is that I think this is a point that we somehow are sidelining growing in many ways because of this enthusiasm about the new upcoming presidential elections. And the other thing I would perhaps say and probably end my remarks with is that I think the Modi government and generally Prime Minister Modi is mindful of this. So in 2019, when he went there and he said, "Up ki baar Trump Sarkar," on the other hand, this time around, he has been much more neutral. He said Modi and the US and progress together, something like that, which is much more anodyne and which is much more neutral. So I guess India is also agile, India is also mature, and India is also trying to sort of keep its options open in case of whoever becomes the president. But lastly, regardless of who comes to the White House, and that is perhaps the most fundamental thing that maybe everybody here on the panel agrees to, which is that the India-US relationship is absolutely in for the longer haul, and all the enabling mechanisms that we have seen be set in the last 10 years are absolutely reflective of that.